Evelyn Harper was 71 years old, with hands that knew the weight of hard work. That evening, a party lit up Richard Callahan's mansion. Soft music, loud laughter, crystal glasses, and Evelyn, invisible among it all. She cleaned in silence while the world around her sparkled. No one saw her. A guest spilled wine on the marble floor and said, without even glancing at her, "Someone should clean this." Evelyn cleaned it. As she bent down, her hand trembled. She took a deep breath and kept going. That night, back in her small apartment, she looked at a photo of herself as a teacher. 30 years helping children read, dream, and believe. Now she cleaned mansions, and that was okay. She told herself that every night. It's okay. The next morning, when she arrived at the mansion, Richard was waiting for her with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Today we're finally fixing the bedroom," he said. "I've been waiting for you to do this." Something in his tone caught in Evelyn's throat. She couldn't say exactly what it was, but she felt it. The city admired Richard Callahan. He donated to hospitals, sponsored events, and always appeared in the newspapers smiling. But inside the mansion, he was different, cold, impatient, calculating. He watched Evelyn work as if evaluating her every move. At the end of the day, he said calmly, "Before you leave, we need to move the mattress upstairs." Evelyn looked at the enormous mattress leaning against the wall, heavy, wide, impossible for one person alone. She hesitated. Richard had already turned his back. "I'll be back in 10 minutes, he said. "It should be done by then." Evelyn stood alone in the hallway. She looked at the mattress, then at her own hand, and she began. That night, Evelyn called her daughter. "How was work, Mom?" "Easy," she lied. "Light." She hung up, opened the cabinet. Hidden behind folded sheets were the medicine boxes, more than anyone should ever need. She took each one in silence. Then she walked to the shelf and picked up the old photo. Her, young, smiling, surrounded by children, in the classroom. 30 years of teaching. Now she could barely bend her knees without pain. She whispered to the photo, "I used to help people stand. Now I can barely stand myself." She put the photo back, turned off the light, but sleep didn't come. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the mattress, about Richard's hands, about the cold tone of his voice, and about something he said that she couldn't shake from her mind. "I've been waiting for you to do this." Why had he waited for her? In the master bedroom, the mattress was waiting. Richard stood still, arms crossed, watching. "It's not that heavy," he said. "Just lift from the side." Evelyn positioned her hands, took a deep breath, and began to push. The weight was immense. Her arms trembled. Her back protested with every inch. "Come on," Richard said impatiently. "We don't have all day." She pushed, harder, and then something happened. It wasn't a loud sound. It wasn't dramatic. It was a silent, devastating feeling in her back, as if something holding everything together simply stopped. Evelyn released the mattress and stood still, breath caught, hand gripping the side of the bed. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't move." Richard opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, 3 firm knocks at the front door. They looked at each other. Nobody was expected. Officer Daniel Brooks entered with calm steps and attentive eyes. Someone had made an anonymous report. Possible. Worker exploitation. When he reached the bedroom, he found Evelyn leaning against the bed, breathing shallowly, face pale. Richard stepped forward. "She just got a little tired. Everything is fine here, officer." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He looked at the mattress, at the medication visible in Evelyn's bag, at the way she gripped the side of the bed without being able to let go. Then he crouched slightly and asked in a gentle voice, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't think I can stand up," she said softly. Daniel stood up, reached for his radio. Richard stepped forward. "This is unnecessary. She just needs to rest." "Sir," Daniel's voice was firm, yet calm. "Please step back." He called the ambulance, and while they waited, Daniel opened a small notebook and began to write. At the hospital, the doctor spoke carefully, but directly. Spinal injury caused by excessive strain. Evelyn would need rest, physical therapy, and close attention. Her daughter, Patricia, arrived with red eyes. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn looked at her own hands. "I didn't want you to worry. I'm your daughter. That's my job." The two sat in silence for a moment. Then Patricia took her mother's hand gently and didn't let go. Outside the room, Daniel watched through the glass window. He saw the daughter crying, saw Evelyn squeezing her hand back, saw a woman who had carried too much weight for too long. He opened his notebook, reread what he had written at the mansion, and added one line, "This didn't happen by accident." He closed the notebook and stood in the hallway for a long moment, thinking, because something didn't add up, and Daniel Brooks was the kind of person who couldn't ignore when something didn't add up. Daniel spent the following days researching medical records, complaint files, old names, and little by little, he found a disturbing pattern. 3 women, all elderly. All had worked at Richard Callahan's mansion. All had left after getting hurt. No formal records, no official complaints. As if they had simply disappeared into silence. Daniel wrote down every name. Then one name appeared in an old medical file, nearly faded with time. Harriet Cole. He looked up the address, a nursing home 40 minutes away. Daniel grabbed his coat, his keys, and his small notebook. Before leaving, he looked one last time at the list of names on his desk. 3 women, 3 silences. And Evelyn had almost become the 4th. He needed to find Harriet Cole before someone convinced her to stay silent. Harriet Cole was 82 years old with eyes that had seen too much. When Daniel mentioned Richard's name, she stopped rocking her chair. "Why are you asking about him?" "Because someone else got hurt," Daniel said carefully. Harriet was silent for a long moment. Then she looked out the window. "He always knew exactly how much to ask," she said softly. "Just enough so you couldn't say no." She told everything, calmly, with dignity, the impossible tasks, the accumulated exhaustion, the day she also couldn't get up anymore, and the envelope Richard sent afterward, money, and a paper to sign. "I needed the money," she said without shame, "so I signed." Then she slowly stood up, walked to the drawer, and came back with a yellowed envelope. "But I kept a copy," she said, and placed it in Daniel's hands. He looked at the envelope, then at Harriet. She was afraid, but she had spoken anyway. Inside the envelope was a copy of a confidential agreement. Cold legal language. But in the middle of it all, one small and devastating detail. The property address appeared 3 times, in 3 different agreements, with 3 different women. Same house, same pattern, same silence bought. Daniel took everything to his supervisor. The investigation became official. Meanwhile, across the city, Richard Callahan received a call from his lawyer. "Someone has been asking questions." Richard stood still for a moment, then said calmly, "Handle it." But this time, something was different. This time there were documents. This time there were names. And this time there was Evelyn Harper, who that same afternoon took her first steps in physical therapy. Small, painful, but hers. The therapist smiled. "Good, 1 step at a time." Evelyn looked ahead and took one more. Richard Callahan's charity event went ahead as planned. Smiles, photographs, applause. But in the corner of the room, a young journalist watched with a notepad in hand. He asked a quiet question to one of Richard's assistants. The assistant became visibly uncomfortable. Richard noticed from across the room, kept his smile, but his hands, hidden behind his back, slowly closed into fists. On the other side of the city, Evelyn sat on the sofa with her granddaughter Lily, 6 years old. "Read it again, Grandma." Evelyn opened the book and read aloud, slowly, with that voice that once filled entire classrooms. Lily rested her head on her shoulder. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, and for the first time in a long time, she felt she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That same night, Daniel's phone rang, an unknown number. He answered. On the other end, a hesitant voice said, "I used to work for Richard Callahan, and I think I need to talk to you." Her name was Claire Sutton, Richard's former personal assistant. She had left 2 years earlier without any public explanation. She met Daniel at a quiet coffee shop. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. "I saw things," she said. "Agreements being signed. Older women leaving quietly. I told myself it wasn't my business." "What changed?" Daniel asked. Claire looked at the table. "I saw the video of Evelyn at the hospital. Someone filmed her leaving on a stretcher." She paused. "She looked like my grandmother." Daniel waited in silence. "If no one speaks," he said softly, "it keeps happening." Claire closed her eyes, then nodded. "I'll give you what I have." That same afternoon, an officer delivered legal papers to the front door of Richard Callahan's mansion. Richard opened the envelope, read the first line, and for the first time in a long time, the smile completely disappeared from his face. Richard's lawyer was direct. "We can settle this quietly, a number that makes everyone comfortable." But across the table sat the representative of the workers' rights organization, Margaret Ellis. She didn't even open her notepad. "We're not here for a number," she said. "We're here for accountability." Richard looked at his lawyer. The lawyer looked at the documents. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Meanwhile, Evelyn received a visit from Patricia and Lily. Patricia brought soup. Lily brought a drawing, a house, a son, 2 figures holding hands. "That's me and you, Grandma," Lily said. Evelyn held the drawing, carefully, then looked at her daughter. "They want me to speak publicly," she said softly. Patricia became serious. "What do you want, Mom?" Evelyn looked at Lily's drawing, then walked to the shelf and picked up her old teacher's badge, held it for a long moment, and then said, "I'm going to talk." The room wasn't large, but it was full. Evelyn sat at the front calmly, hands on the table, her teacher's badge in her pocket. She had no prepared speech, only the truth. She spoke about the pain she hid, about the medicine at the back of the cabinet, about the fear of losing her job and what that would mean for her daughter and granddaughter. She spoke about the silence. I was invisible, she said, not because no one could see me, but because no one chose to look. The room went completely quiet. A man in the second row discreetly wiped his eyes. Evelyn continued, I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here because somewhere out there, there's another woman just like me, still silent, still afraid. She paused. I just want her to know she doesn't have to be. At the back of the room, a journalist was filming. That night, the video began to spread, and in a silent mansion, Richard Callahan watched until the end, alone. The agreement was signed weeks later. No prison, but real consequences. Companies canceled partnerships. Events withdrew invitations. Richard Callahan's name, which once filled pages of praise, now appeared in articles with difficult questions. He still lived in the mansion, but the house felt larger and emptier. On the other side of the city, Harriet Cole watched the news in the nursing home's living room. A nurse noticed she was smiling. Good news? The nurse asked. Something like that, Harriet replied. At physical therapy, Evelyn took her longest steps yet. The therapist applauded. Daniel closed his small notebook for the last time, filed the case, and stood for a moment looking at the cover. 3 names. And now Evelyn. 4 women who had carried too much silence. He placed the notebook in the drawer. That afternoon, a letter arrived at Evelyn's apartment, a simple envelope, no famous return address. She opened it slowly, read it, and her eyes filled with tears. The letter was from the neighborhood community library, a simple invitation, a reading group for children, once a week. We heard about you. We think you'd be perfect. Evelyn folded the letter carefully and said yes. On the first morning, she walked in slowly, supported by her cane. The children were already seated in a semicircle, curious. A curly-haired girl raised her hand. Why do you walk with a cane? Evelyn smiled. Because some roads are harder than others. She paused. But they still lead somewhere beautiful. The girl thought for a second and nodded, satisfied with the answer. Evelyn opened the book and began to read. Outside, Daniel drove past on the street. He saw the light on in the library, saw Evelyn's silhouette through the window, surrounded by children. He smiled and kept driving. Some stories don't end with fanfare. They end with a woman with a cane, a room full of children, and a voice that still has so much to say.